We have some big shoes to fill as Aaron's favorite people. So let's just kick off with introductions. Tell us who you are, where you work, the fun stuff.
So I am Annie Stickney. I'm sure a lot of people here know me already. I've been in the industry for about almost 20 years. So my Botox is working out really well.
That's an amazing intro. My name is Kevin Washington. I am usually at the retail version of these events, but I run enterprise experimentation and product analytics for Best Buy. Long title basically just means any A/B testing, multivariate testing, how are we looking at different models against each other and whatnot. Support a lot of that, and been getting more into the owned and unowned media space.
Awesome. Okay, well, I can't think of any better way for kicking off our first panel of the event than to instigate a fight between the two of you. It's the best way to build camaraderie.
I love it.
And so if we're going to talk about Omnichannel and all the puts and takes in the channels, we have to kind of talk a little bit about the finger pointing that can go on, right? Because when a campaign does really well, media says, that was us, that was our strategy, it was our bidding, it was, you know, the approach that we took. But when it does poorly, Kevin, your landing page, that UX, it was unacceptable. It wasn't the quality of the traffic inbound. So I want to know,
Always.
How do you think through and cut through the noise to figure out what's really going on to assess campaign performance?
Yeah, what immediately comes to mind is revenge analytics, and I know all of you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. So whenever we get into this West Side Story dance-off of this is I did this, no I did this, just go to the data and take a look at your sessions and see your customer journey, and maybe there is a clear difference between what we thought we were sending stuff to and maybe the landing page was updated and we didn't know. And so it probably is one or the other, but you need to have the data and follow the customer journey to prove that out. Because I have gone into so many meetings where it's I did this and I did this. I'm like, okay, well, let's have the data prove what actually happened, and then people are more willing to release some of their opinions on what actually happened, because this is the customer using their own data to tell you this is what actually happened. I squirreled in the wrong direction.
And that's a similar thing to that revenge analytics piece. I think A/B testing comes really hand in hand with a lot of that. I've had instances where I know where people are coming from. If you give me the UTM parameter, I can say, hey, when you get somebody onto the site from that parameter, let's prove and see whether or not it's my landing page or it's just that you're sending me unqualified traffic. I'll remove everything from that page except for the add to cart button and the information that they need, and we'll call it the simple PDP, and we'll just see whether or not people buy or they go, nah, this isn't what I wanted, and bounce. And so it's all about what are you trying to drive, what are your goals of whatever it is that you're doing. If it's a campaign that's not in the retail space, then it's okay, cool, let's get signups, let's get that top funnel acquisition. If it is retail, there are 4 Ps of retail. Promotion is one of them. Place is another one of them. Those are the only 2 things that we can have an argument about. It's still about the products.
All of my data that I send you is perfect, by the way.
100%. But we don't control the price. We don't control the product that actually shows up. So it's kind of a, yes, we can have an argument, but we need to look holistically, and that data is the right way to do it.
Yeah.
Awesome. So is Revenge Analytics the title of your memoir?
100%.
I love that. Okay, so if we talk about Revenge Analytics and we talk about running an A/B test to help clarify, those feel a little bit to me like reactive things that we can kind of retro assess what happened. If we want to talk about omni-channel attribution, measurement, how do you proactively think about structuring the approach to campaigns so you maybe have a clearer picture going in?
So I like to take it as, so I used to be in the sciences, and so I take a very scientific method approach where I would rather not go all hog on MTA and MMM, because now you're trying to measure all of the channels all at once, and none of the channels are measured the same at all. I would rather go in and say, okay, how does organic search affect owned media? Because obviously they have a really nice handshake with each other. How does email marketing affect paid search? Let's really measure that effect and that causality with the data, and then start adding in another channel and another channel. It's basically just it's incrementality testing 101, but you kind of have to remind people that that's something that you need to do before you go all in on this great new fantastic thing. And I'm you're not ready for that, sweetie.
And I would repeat everything that you said 100% is accurate. The additional layer is you don't always have to just look at the click-through rates and the purchase conversions. There's a lot of other things going on the site that we look at as micro conversions, right? How do we think about, okay, so you got to the site, did you then engage with the reviews? Did you then engage with, like, what did they actually do back to the journey piece of it? So maybe we are optimizing for a certain part of that customer journey. We're just not getting them to that next step.
Yeah.
And 100%.
Yeah, like I feel like omnichannel analytics or omnichannel in general is just a rebranding of the old phrase, like having a scent trail. It's literally just everything is just a new rebranded new word for something that's really kind of old, but now it's like having its day in the sun.
100%. And I will also say, for attribution in general, pick an approach and stick with that approach. Well, whatever the approach, if it's last touch, if it's first touch, if it's multi-touch, like, cool. But the thing that I find a lot is that one data science team has one approach that they like to use, and then another data science team has another approach they like to use, and they're kind of working in silos, and then until it gets to the SVP, nobody realizes that these two teams are using two different approaches to the thing, and now we have two different answers.
Wait, are we working at the same company?
Yeah, they're both blue, I mean, you know.
It's like we've been in those conversations all the time where one side of the business is like, this is what we're doing, all the numbers are going down, what's going on? And then they bring in another side that's literally measuring things totally differently. And we're like, no, we're going up. And then you sit in this meeting for hours at a time, and then there's people like me that are like doers. I don't want to sit in a meeting, talk about something until I'm blue in the face. I'm like, cool. Do revenge analytics and say like, okay, this is what actually happened. You guys can decide which one you want to believe.
And that's another part of the conversation too, is when the first thing I always do when I get in these meetings now, when I've got, you know, an SVP or a CMO pulling me into the office, okay, let's take the analysis that was done that got to this, and let's just walk through that first. And like, I know you don't want to be part of that CMO, but like, I will go back and do that, because what I found is, hey, you didn't take LY into consideration.
Yeah.
And because you didn't normalize against LY, you're just looking at the trend for holiday.
Yeah.
So yeah, people aren't buying; they're waiting for Black Friday. I'm like, yeah, that's on track. Yeah,
That makes sense.
100%.
So I love that you both talked about like the handshake between channels, and then when you're actually on the platform, like how are they engaging on the product detail page? How are they engaging in different steps along the journey? So how do you think about the holistic funnel for a customer all the way from advertisement above the platform and then into your owned channels? And are there certain progression steps that matter more to you than others when you're assessing the health of that funnel?
Yeah, so like I focus mostly on everything that comes to the page, and so I always try and emphasize again like having a scent trail. So am I driving a paid media ad to a page that has the same words? That's like step number one, and you think that that's kind of obvious at this point, but it's really not. And then having like the correct ads on the page. So if you're driving content to like a page that has nothing to do with that, like you're not going to get the conversion rate. And you also have to think through like the page itself. So there's a lot of times where the developers will come in and be like, we built this fantastic new like fancy page, but then they told nobody that it needs to be coded a completely different way for incoming traffic, and then all of your data is missing. And you're like, okay, well, I know exactly what happened here.
Yep. And as far as once people get to the page, that's exactly it. And I think that's one of the reasons my role is so weird for me. I've kind of been on that, like, hey, I build the page, I own the way that things get once we get here. But being in this half analytics, half product role, it's been really interesting to be able to say like, oh no, we have to make sure that the events are firing appropriately so everybody can track this stuff all the way through the ad funnel. But when we think about once someone gets onto the page, even if it's just getting us to the Best Buy homepage, how do you go from that to the next experience to the next experience? One of the first questions that I always ask product teams to think about is, what is the job of the page? So if there's a campaign running, where are you trying to send people? It's usually the product display page. But if you're trying to send them to a list page or anything else, what's the job of that page? What is it really trying to accomplish? Is it trying to get you to add to cart? Is it trying to get you to engage further? And how do we track those metrics within that to say, okay, well, we know success is if we increase revenue. Great. How do we understand whether or not we're people are coming here and then bouncing because it's unqualified, or they're getting here and they're just experiencing our site in a different way than we expected, because maybe it's a different customer than we're used to.
Yeah.
Like, depending on where that campaign came from, you've just put new campaigns into ChatGPT for some reason, and now people are coming in. It's a completely different customer. We have to treat them differently. We can't say the campaign failed. We can't say you're sending unqualified traffic. They wanted something, but how do we engage with them differently and approach it a little bit more with an experimental mindset?
Yeah.
Got it. And so actually, Kevin, I want to ask a little bit about, sometimes when you land on a page, it might have a clear intent at the top, but as you move through the page, there's a lot of conflicting pieces that might direct the customer elsewhere. And I'll pick on maybe like sponsored products as an example, or sponsored banners, or when you get to the very bottom of some Best Buy pages, there's even referral links that go out of the Best Buy experience into other pages. How do you think about performance health when you have some of those competing priorities on a page that might be dedicated to pushing them towards the cart?
It really just depends on the customer. So you're looking at the health of the page as in, okay, what is my add to cart rate? I'm not just caring about whether or not they convert, but did they add it to cart? I'm looking at how they engage with the price block overall. As you start to scroll through the page, are they spending more time on certain aspects? Are they clicking through things? I want to know how they're engaging all the way down. But if they get to the bottom and this really wasn't what they're looking for, you've already made it past our recommendations. You've already made it past our essential add-ons. You've already made it past all the reviews about how great the product is. Now you're at whether it's endemic ads that are going to just send you to another page within Best Buy, or you get all the way to the bottom to those kind of affiliate links. I mean, if you click on any of those, like, we still make some money. So it's that balancing act of I want to make money. It's a question, and in a lot of cases, it's higher margin dollars. So it's about how can you put these things in place that you're not making the customer feel like you're just trying to go after a cash grab where you have a ton of ads all over the place, but at the same time measuring the actual success of the page being that add to cart or that purchase conversion. And even in a lot of those cases, we'll do tests. I'll say very consistently every month we should be talking about our placements. What's in those? Are they endemic? Are they non-endemic? How do we test to see whether or not they are harming purchase conversion or not, and by how much, and is it worth the amount of dollars we're getting on the other side from that? So there's a lot of those things that happen consistently, and what I'm really looking forward to is how can we automate more of those things so they're happening regularly. But
yeah, because that example, like, you actually have a very engaged user. If they've been on that page for long enough to get to the bottom. Like, okay, like they actively want something. Like, let's try and help them find what they want.
Yeah, and that's going to help you understand, okay, maybe we're missing something. If this isn't the product, are we showing the wrong products? How do we take that data back and say, for this recommendation model that we're building with AI, it's another AI,
Yeah, AI.
How do we take that data and make better decisions as a company? It's not just about that in the moment. It's about how are we holistically looking at the macro environment and making better choices.
Yeah, and that kind of leads into probably your next question about, like, how do you personalize for those people?
Why are you reading my mind, or are you just looking on my tablet I bought from Best Buy last week?
What?
Genuinely
Hey, we
did.
love that. Look
Bought
at
this
that.
from
Look at
Best
that.
Buy.
Product
It's right here.
placement.
You want to go with that one?
Influencer marketing.
Do you want to moderate from here? No, but truly, like, the potential and the pitfall of omnichannel, right, is that you have many channels and many ways to engage with a single guest. But Annie, how do you think about personalization and how far to extend it up the funnel? And is it ever too soon to add personalization to the customer experience?
Yeah, I grapple with this a lot because I'm sure you all have the exact same mandate from your upper management, is like personalization at scale. We always have to be personalizing. And then in the back of my head, I'm like, well, if cookies are going away, you can't really personalize until they log into your website and you know who that person is. You can do your best, but it's really just a guessing game. Like, you can use Google Customer Match, but, like, how accurate is that really? And then that's only accurate for Google. And like,
Which is 70% of browsers, we learned recently.
Yeah. Well, don't discount DuckDuckGo. It's
Oh
having
man,
a heyday.
I use it. I use it for everything.
Yeah.
I love it.
But in that regards, if you do use, like, a DuckDuckGo, that is completely privacy, and that is not going to give you personalization at all. So how do you tailor that experience for the people that you literally don't know about? They're just an unknown user. I've grappled with this for a while. Like, you have to try and collect as much information about that user's customer journey on your site and try and create some sort of algorithm, maybe using AI, To then tailor, okay, like if they're going through most of the credit card pages, they're probably in the market for a credit card. If they're going to every single page and clicking on every single owned media ad, they have no idea, and just give them all the XLOB content that they could possibly want.
And I think that's exactly, like you're seeing companies like Session AI, and there's a couple others that are saying like, hey, within 5 clicks, I can give you somebody's propensity to buy. Those types of propensity models have become much more available nowadays with AI and everything else. But at the same time, AI, personalization doesn't always have to be like hey, we're showing you exactly what you want to see based on all the things that you did on Instagram last week, and here you go. It could be something as simple as, okay, you got to the site, you went and you searched for televisions at 65-inch, okay, cool. When you go back to the homepage, it now has TVs in the top banner that you can just click and go back to where you were just looking at. It's simple stuff, but to your point, how can I see everything that you're doing and use that data on top of what are the midline customer for us doing, and personalize based on that, and then alter it based on your journey through the site as well. So I think that there's still a ton of room for algorithms and everything else. You still have the cold start problem when you start putting new content out. Like there's a lot of stuff going into it, but I've been really excited about that space because of how much experimentation has kind of opened up and like allowed you to test models against other models. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, like I feel like there's a really big gap in like the analytics world in companies, because everyone spends so much money building out customer analytics teams.
Yes.
But that's only,
Yes.
what, like 50% of the users of your site? Like, I feel like you need to have like an unknown customer or an unknown user analytics team and really focus in on those type of like AI models or learnings, because then like they go hand in hand. Like those unknown people, half of those are probably customers that just haven't logged in. And so we do technically know them.
And that's one of those things where, back to what we were saying, one of the first questions was like how when people are coming in, if I know based on the UTM parameter or anything else, or if you clicked on one of our links in our email address, like email, I now have your email address, right? So now I don't have to log you in, but I can run a check and I can go see what's going on. Or when they're coming in from a certain campaign, I can give you a different experience based on where that campaign was and the strategy that went into that.
Yeah.
But that communication doesn't really happen with
No.
like the product teams and the marketing teams as much. But it's a gap we're trying to bridge. But
Yeah, like
that's why we're here today.
I'm working with my search team right now, and I'm trying to build out a workflow to help understand like a certain line of business. And so I'm grabbing the GCLID parameter and matching it with an Adobe Analytics session ID, and then I'm sending the data to the search team, and they keep on asking me, okay, why are there multiple GCLIDs per lead ID on the site? I'm like, that's probably because somebody like clicked on your ad, said that's not what I want, but then they clicked on another ad. I'm like, that is literally an in-market person, and they're trying to find the right product for them, and then they eventually got one, and this is all an unknown person, but like we can stitch that together.
And then it's a conversation of, okay, well, if they had to go back to search again and then come back, maybe there's something about your site where you're not showing the right recommendations, or else, especially if they eventually bought. Okay, cool, they bought that, they came in through this, how are we recommending, like where's the connectivity happening, right?
Like they were dedicated to getting our product, but we might have made it more difficult for them.
Which is kind of how it goes, I think, more often than not. You end up with just these feature jungles of things, right, that everybody thinks is a good idea, but when you put them all together, it's not. So that's why I'm always a fan of running a test where you simplify the heck out of a piece of information. Sorry, a page, experience, whatever it is. Like just run a test where you just pull everything out of it, see how much money you would lose in signups or ads or anything else, but see how much you would gain in purchase conversion. Because I think we lose sight of that trade-off a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So Kevin, I do actually want to poke into that a little bit, right? Because I think it's rare, unless you have just the most amazing intuition in the world, you just hit home runs all day, that you can just implement changes with confidence and succeed, right? So test and learn is really important. When's the right time to start implementing a test and learn plan on your own channels, and how do you go about structuring that and approaching it?
I mean, immediately, as early as possible, because you want to think about how would I test this? And even if you're not going to run a test, understanding that helps you say, even if I'm doing a pre-post analysis, I now at least have a baseline of understanding what I was trying to succeed at. And back to being scientific, I expect every single thing that goes into production to have a hypothesis, to have success measures, to have a value proposition associated, to have an understanding of the problem that you're trying to solve before we even have a conversation about you thinking about going and building the thing.
I think you're asking too much.
1,000%. But when your entire job as a product manager is to do that, you should be doing that. So a lot of what, when I came into Best Buy, even when I was at Nordstrom, it's not often a platform problem. Very rarely is it a platform problem, unless you're using Test and Target. Just kidding, Adobe. But it's not often a platform problem. It's usually an operating problem. Like, and even with like we use Adobe for a lot of stuff. It's fine. It's a perfectly great platform. Everybody talks a lot of shit about it, but like it's a great platform when you use it correctly and you have the operations to back it up effectively.
How many people have actually implemented a tool correctly? Yeah.
Once. Once. But that's the question. Even for experimentation, the first thing we did was we redid the entire operating model before we even moved on to a new platform. And this is not super public, but we definitely made it a little more painful to use the existing platform with that operating model, introducing that pain a little bit. And then when we released the new thing, it was all beautiful. But yeah, I would say do it early, set up something at least to the point that you're saying, if this is what I'm trying to achieve, when this happens, then I expect this to happen, and this should be the resulted value. It's going to change your conversation with your product and data partners, and it's just going to make it easier for everybody when the test is over to not try and go back and say, hey, can you tell me how this metric moved? And then we have to tell you, well, you didn't tag that because we didn't know you wanted to know that, so no. But
and then they'll come back and say, figure it out anyway?
And then they'll just say, okay, let's just use revenue per visit then. And that's what we do, and we just hope for the best. And then it comes inconclusive, and then we say scale it anyway because, oh, well, at least it wasn't a loss. Like, I don't know if it was a loss. It was inconclusive. And they're like, that's the same as neutral, right? Sure.
So one of my experiences has been that, you know, it tends to be that every team has their own learning agenda. And that's good, right? Like, you want that innate curiosity spread across your organization. But do you both think it's important for those test and learn plans to be synchronized? And then any tips, tricks, recommendations, or just commands on, like, here's how you need to approach building that alignment so you have clean measurement end to end?
Oh, they have to be aligned, especially in like the air quote new omni-channel world. If you are doing an incrementality test and you're excluding a couple channels, which happens a lot, and they say like, oh, we were 100% incremental on this one channel. I'm like, yeah, but paid search was on the entire time. And they're like, oh, but we didn't go into that because that's not in our budget area. Like, that's not in our line of business. Like, the people doing paid search are elsewhere. And I'm like, yeah, but it's still a channel that's in market.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you have to have buy-in from the entire line of business, and including affiliates. Like, I feel like affiliates are kind of get forgotten in the mix of things, but now with like ChatGPT, like we were trying to do some testing on that and say like, what's the best Chase credit card? And it refused to give us a Chase URL or a Chase answer. And when we kind of kept on like editing the query being like, give us a URL, give us a Chase URL, it again like tried to be anti-bias, I'm assuming, and it literally sent us to affiliates. I'm like, okay, well now we need to really loop in the affiliate network now, because that's gonna be a legitimate channel in the upcoming like Google Gemini or ChatGPT search.
Got it. Yeah. And so how do you solve though for the cross-team alignment to those testing structures? Is it a ceremony, a governance team? Like, how do you actually enforce it?
It is a ceremony. Everyone wears white robes. There's candles.
Just no hats.
Made of Egyptian cotton silk bed sheets. Yeah, got it.
I would say synchronized, no. Centralized, yes. I think you do need to have a place where anybody can go and see all of the experiments that are happening and who's on first base for each of them, right? Who's the point of contact? What was the goal of it? What was the hypothesis? All those pieces. Centralizing that really democratizes the understanding of what we're doing as a company more broadly. The reason I say synchronized no is because if I tell my ad team, hey, you have to wait to run your experiment until their experiment starts, and it'll be a week. and then you guys can go at the same time, and then we can avoid some collision, and we can do some. They're gonna be like, no, like you're wasting time. Hey, Kevin's making things take longer. He's a blocker, so I need the technology team to stop blocking us. So what we do instead is we say, okay, I know every single experiment that's running at the company. Anybody who wants to can go look at every experiment that's running. But what we also do is say, is there going to be collision between these tests? And typically what we do to say that is, are they going after the exact same metric? Are they going after the same customer from an audience perspective? Are they going after the same customer experience, whether it's not the same customer or not? And if those questions are, any of those are yes, then we have to take a deeper dive and say, are they going to collide? But even if they do, that's okay. Because the last question you need to ask is, if they both win, will they go into production together? And if the answer is yes, then cool, like definitely have them collide. We'll pull out that cohort separately and have a conversation about, hey, did they work better together? Did they work worse together? And now we can talk about which one of them is more valuable if they both do win, right? But I think that that's a miss on a lot of, in my opinion, and other people in the industry have a much different opinion on collisions than I do. I think you should let things collide whenever possible, as long as they're not directly competing and sending things opposite directions on purpose.
Yeah. So I'm hearing you need to have a calendar and actually talk to people.
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
I don't like those recommendations as an introvert. No,
Yeah,
no, thank you.
I'm literally like, the quote in my head right now is like, florals for spring, groundbreaking.
Literally, it's so straightforward, but I've never seen it done for experimentation extremely well outside of like a Netflix or a Shopify, where they've kind of, or Shopify, Spotify, where they've kind of built it into the platforms that they grew from the ground up.
Yeah. Sounds like you need like an omni-channel person to help organize.
Exactly, and that's why I got hired.
All right, final question. Annie, if there's anything I've learned over the last week of talking to you, is that you're full of surprises. And so I would like to know, do you have any sneaky good recommendations for your peers on how to drive the most performance, something that we would normally gloss over but should really spend time on?
Oh, Lordy. Like, honestly, it's not like sneaky, but it's literally just listening to the data instead of listening to what you want to have happen. And like this is an argument I deal with daily, where they're like, no, I really think that this is what happened. I'm like, no, it's not. Like, you need to look at the data and then get your answer from that. It's not sneaky, it's not groundbreaking. I'm just I like my data.
Yeah. Kevin, anything you'd add?
I mean, I would say mine was also relatively simple. It's just spend the time before you do the thing to write what you're going to do and what the goal of it is. And if you're going to ask somebody to build something, don't change it.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to ask somebody to go pull an audience the day before the campaign's supposed to go live, please do not ask them to change the audience, because it changes so many things. But yeah, just writing down.
There was some pain in your voice when you said that.
A little bit of pain, But I would just say, put what you want to accomplish in writing and make it clear what you're trying to achieve, so that everybody can be on the same page and work towards that goal.
Awesome. All right, what questions do you all have for Annie and Kevin? Way in the back.
Burn. I know my voice carries. Hey, Jason at Zillow. Was wondering, maybe talking about more on the measurement attribution side. There's a lot of different ways to do that. MMMs, more direct lift testing. Was curious if you guys lean one or another, if you're using one more strategically, tactically, or is it kind of like a blend where they're all kind of giving you partial insights in what channel or where we should be going?
I mean, I feel like you just answered that question,
Yeah,
because they measure totally different things, and you also have to make sure that the line of business knows what they're measuring and how to read that result. There's so many people that it's like the buzzword. They're like, oh, MTA, it's going to tell me so much better information. I'm like, okay, well, in what sense? Is that the information that you want to optimize towards?
Yes.
Or do you want to optimize towards something else? Yeah, it really just depends on what your goal is, and that they understand.
And I would say, same thing. I would just say pick one, and then once you're really good at one, you can start to see what the gaps are, and then pick a second one that will fill those gaps as best as possible. I don't typically advocate for a combination approach initially, because then you end up with one metric, but you're not really sure where it starts or stops, and filling the gap then after. Like if you're going to do first touch attribution, that's one. Cool, maybe I need a multi-touch attribution to fill the gaps in my knowledge here. But if you start with something that's halfway in between a multi-touch attribution, also kind of last touch though in some scenarios, and other scenarios it's actually just as long as they made it to the site, you end up with this weird metric that just you can't really build on.
Yeah, and I've found a lot of times people can't integrate all of the channels at once, and so that's technically not going to give you the full picture. It's going to give you the MTA or the MMM of those three verticals that you were able to pull in, but there's like 20 other ones that probably influenced it, and you have no idea.
Annie, Kevin, since we started off the panel with rage analytics, you guys strike me as people who have run FU tests before. Have you ever done something where you know the answer is wrong, but you're just going to test it to get the person off their back?
My team motto is FAFO, so yes.
Yeah, I will neither confirm nor deny. But I've approved tests that I knew for a fact would go terribly, because people just wouldn't leave it alone, and they needed to be able to see that this is why, right? We're going to spend 2 weeks doing a thing, and 2 weeks is a lot of time in technology, right? Like, you could build a whole half of an app in 2 weeks. So if I'm going to run a test for 2 weeks where everything stays the same, I mean, okay. And when it turns out to be a waste of time, it's like, well, we need to look at that, capitalization that you just spent, but.
Yeah, like you could have spent all of those millions on my bonus.
Yeah, 1000%, 1000%.
Do we have any other questions for Annie or Kevin or Doug?
Hopefully not the last
Wow.
one.
Awesome. Annie, Kevin, Doug, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Awesome.